Yay.
That's fun.
Good job, guys. That
That's
was cool.
fun. I think there needs to be another Mr. Nice Guy book. There can't just be one in the world.
I know there's got to be more.
Yeah. I think you're just the men to do it.
Yeah. And there's a few. I take exception to a few things in the original book anyway, so it wouldn't hurt to do one that I feel a little bit more connected to.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking that same thing. I thought, there's still room. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah. Okay, Rex, Mr. Nice Guy Rex. What?
That's gonna get thrown around a lot today. I thought this was fascinating because I really feel like in Western culture today there's this push for men to just be nice guys and cast off their masculinity and just be agreeable and go along with everything. How do you tackle that? Like, it just seems to be like the kind of the narratives right now. How do you tackle that?
It's kind of a tricky question there, Rex, because like I think what you see, it's what Brannon talked about, the pendulum swing. Even if you look in the space that we're in today, there's this, hey, be docile, don't be dangerous. Your toxic masculinity is going to blow up the world, right? So then a man actually gets reinforced for being a good boy when he is a good boy. And yet a woman, it's a weird paradox. She wants to be married to someone that she can be safe with. And sometimes safety is mistaken for weakness.
Oh, yeah.
When in reality, what you need to be married to a man who is principled, who is capable of being dangerous, but knows how to bridle that into a space where it's protective of his relationship and his family instead of blowing up the world. And what you see in our world today is the overcorrection. If you get online right now, you can go type in authentic masculinity and you're going to be popped up with like 6 different guys who have their own platforms that drop the F-bomb all the time, that tell you have to go like do this, this, and this to be a real man. And what they're missing is actually a lot of the goodness that comes from being a Mr. Nice Guy when it's authentic. So it's the authenticity and the honesty paired up with all of that goodness that actually creates real safety inside of a relationship. And so you got to find that middle ground. It's hard to find sometimes.
Mm-hmm. It almost reminds me, gets me thinking about the need for, humility, right? Meekness is not weakness type of a thing. And even it was a Gottman, I think, that talked about, hey, one of the best characteristics of a man is his influence from his wife, which again, it feels like this double-edged sword. It's like, and that's not, whatever you say, honey. Yeah, if you say it, then I'll do it. But this humility that I'm open to her thoughts and ideas, it doesn't necessarily mean my thoughts or hers. Is that kind of that line?
I think that humility word is so tricky, especially in certain cultures. Because yes, I agree with everything you said, Dave. But humility is also about, it's like confidence in knowing yourself and knowing who you really are. That's how you can then show up humble. So that's part of humility. And when that gets taken away, then it's just weakness. It's just, then I'll be the doormat. So both exists with humility.
I heard a definition of humility and meekness that I kind of stick to, and I actually use in my practice a lot that goes along with this. I think I've heard it from Jordan Peterson, if I'm giving credit to where I think I heard it from. And it says humility and meekness is that his definition is someone who has a sword and knows how to use it, but chooses to keep it in its sheath. And I like that idea because it's like, I know I'm dangerous. I know that I have things that could blow up the world in my life and my relationships. And I also know how to bridle those things. And when I do, they become a force for good inside of my relationship, inside of my life. That's real strength. And so there's honesty in that. Here's my weakness. Here's my strength. And here's how I bridle those things to move towards the goals, or the identity that I have of who I want to be as a man. Right.
That's a really good quote by him, because as we started, the first quote that popped in my head as you guys were talking at the beginning of the show and I was listening was Jordan Peterson when he said, if you think a tough man is dangerous, or you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men can do.
Oh, beautiful.
Because I think that's so true that weak men can really destroy a lot more than dangerous men who are humble, of course. And I love that quote you just shared, Tyler. I hadn't heard that one before. That's a really good one. I really get the sense that what you guys are talking about too is that the frame for a good for healthy masculinity can really be is kind of biblical and can be found in the Christian and Western framework. Do you guys draw on that at all in your work, or am I mistaken for thinking that?
No, you're spot on.
Okay.
A lot of what, like Wild at Heart, John Eldridge, he writes a lot. He kind of frames masculinity a little different. You know, he talks about Jesus being living on the edge. Jesus isn't just humble, soft, weak guy. Like, Jesus is strong. He's funny. He's principled. He'll hold a line. He's boundaried. And so Eldridge, I really learned that from Eldridge. But even if you read the Bible, you can, if you're looking for it, you can totally see it everywhere in there. Healthy masculinity.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm glad you guys are doing this work. You mentioned, Brannon, earlier, I don't want to show you my shadow. Where does the word shadow come from? Why are you using that word? I think I know where it's coming from, but for those who might not know, can you share a little bit more about what the shadow is and where it comes from?
Yeah, it's Carl Jung's work. And he did all kinds of work with the shadow. And he was all about really getting to know his own shadow, and what that is like our dark side, the part that we keep hidden, maybe the little bit disgusting or evil or angry parts of us, to be able to acknowledge that it's there and to get to know those sides of us are really important. So that comes from Carl Jung.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. I think it's important too, because if people don't know themselves, those darker parts can fester and then manifest in horrible ways.
Yes.
And I think you kind of have to conquer the dragon, as I've heard Jordan Peterson say many times.
Rex, could I add something to that just really quickly?
Please do.
Just pressing on me. I think there's also a benefit to not just knowing your shadow makes it so you don't go ruin people's lives, but knowing your shadow, it's that, Joseph Campbell quote that says the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. Our shadows, they're gold mines, and there is gold inside of that mining when you come to know and understand your shadow. That's where people find their life purposes. That's where people find parts of their identity. That's where people find some of their motivations, their talents, their gifts. They have to have the courage to go into the cave and make peace with those things. But when they do, they emerge with new superpowers, so to speak. So it's not just a preventative thing. It's actually an offensive thing to saying, I'm going to go create the life I was designed to live. And in order to do that, I have to understand and value my shadow in a different way than I've been doing and running from it.
Yeah, it would seem like you can't really conquer your dark side if you don't know it either. And say, oh gosh, what's that thing? Is there any kind of example you could share for listeners too that would be like, oh gosh, what are we talking about? How do I face this darker side, and how do I do it so I don't become a monster or something?
I'll give you an example. Just happened today to me. I went to my trainer. I was working out, and he's the nicest guy. He's this younger kid.
He's a nice guy.
And he's a nice guy in a good way. But he has this badge on his t-shirt that says, I stutter. And he does stutter. But like, he's wearing this badge and he's talking to me and he's like, yeah, my therapist was telling me, I have all kinds of things that shut me down when I stutter. I think I'm stupid. I think, what are people thinking? So now I'm just owning it. I'm just like, here it is. I stutter. It's part of who I am. And so that's a small little example of him just outing himself and owning, like, and he's trying to love that part of himself that stutters now, versus fight it and pretend like it's not there. And because we all can see it. Right. So that's just a little example.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Very cool.
That's really good. Really good. Did either one of you guys have any more questions? Because I have a one or two more, but I don't want to step on anybody's toes.
No, go ahead. Shoot away.
Is any of this connected to like, as you guys were talking, I think it's the 4 types of communication: aggressive, assertive, passive aggressive, and passive. Does this come into the work at all when you're working with people?
Yeah, for sure. I think, when you talk about, when you're dealing with a Mr. Nice Guy, you're going to either get passive or you're going to get some passive aggressive stuff because they never want to step straight on into an actual real conversation about that where they could be seen as not good enough in some way. So that's where you get that. But then the passive aggressive part comes out when they're like, then turning the cold shoulder and not connecting with you after some type of a discussion that didn't quite feel right or whatever. So yeah, I don't know that I've thought of it that way before, Rex, that those things are connected, but when you bring that up, that's what I think you'd start to see.
No. Well, I even drew upon that just because early in my marriage, I had to catch myself like, oh, I'm being passive and passive aggressive. I am not being assertive at all. And learning to be assertive was just quite a process of like learning to be empathetic and learning how other people feel, and then trying to phrase things in such a way that's not going to be harmful, but no, this is what I want or what I think, or, we go either way, but this is where I stand on the issue. Is there a way that because you mentioned the word assertive earlier, and I think that's a word that I would think that most nice guys, don't really embrace or comprehend that well. Do you help them become more assertive, or is there like exercises or anything?
That's
Brandon, you want to grab that
go
one?
ahead, Brannon.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, that is the work that we do. Because being more assertiveness sometimes has a negative connotation. I think people think, oh, you're bully, but that's not what assertiveness is. The work that we do is to help people and help men to show up authentically and honestly. That's assertiveness. Is in this situation, here I am, here's my truth. This is what I have to offer. So yeah, Tyler and I do a lot of group work. We work on that underneath stuff, the masculinity and the trauma. And then we practice in group actually saying things that are uncomfortable and hard and speaking truths and just practicing that over and over again. We'll also talk about situations with their spouse of where's an opportunity for you to show up honest where you're not. And then give that support when they go do it and it creates a big mess. And then they come back and they say, hey, how could I have done that better? So yeah, that's a lot of the work we do is to help people be more assertive.
How do you practice? Like you said, you practice being uncomfortable, and like, do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, I could give you a couple of those right now. We part of some of what we do inside of our groups is we give these men that we work with a series of challenges that they have to complete. And then after they complete a challenge, they bring it back to the group and process how it went and what their thoughts were. And so ranging from anything from, we have them do physical things where they come up with like, what's their fear? What's one of the biggest fears? And then we systematically have them walk into and through that fear. Fear of public speaking. Or I had a guy who he's always wanted to do stand-up comedy. He went to the stand-up comedy club on open mic night and just got obliterated. And then he came back to group and talked about it. And what he's now doing is he's now saying, this is me. And then he has a group of men that goes, dude, that was awesome that you did that. It doesn't even matter that you failed. Like, so proud of you. And what did you learn? And look at who you're becoming. And so they're having this emotional experience in their vulnerability that tells them a story that's opposite of what they've lived their whole life. And maybe they do a different assignment where they come up with a history of, hey, here's all the things that I feel most compromised about in my life. Here, guys, this is I. And then they get that feedback, and they usually get 2 things. They get love and acceptance and a push for change at the same time. And that's the secret sauce that helps a guy go, I can be me. Like, I am lovable just as I am as a human being. Right.
That's incredible, because my next question was going to be about the ego. But that seems to be like a really cool way to defeat your ego. It's just like you said, I want to be a comedy guy. You go on stage and you bomb, and then you walk away and you're like, wow, I failed, but it's not over. And I've learned some things from that experience. And there's people who still like want to hang out with me or have lunch, or I'm not dead. a failure. No one wants to hire or stay away from that guy. That's incredible.
It was
Man,
cool.
that's
It was
awesome.
cool. With that one particularly, it was even better because right afterwards, he was talking about how he just bombed. And then we did something in our group called the Laughing Club. And I said, you get one of your jokes to the group right now. And then I prepped the whole group and I said, no matter what, you guys laugh as hard as you can. And so he told his joke and they all just started busting up laughing. And then, of course, the whole group starts actually really laughing because that's what laughter does. And then they got to have this like bonding experience together. And he walks away going, those dudes got my back. They love me. I can go step into this world and fail again. I got a place to land now, you know? And it does defeat the ego because it takes away the need to self-protect.
Yeah, the ego seems to really get in the way of everything. I learned that early in my marriage, is how bad my ego was just throwing crap. Sorry for that word, but just everywhere, and causing lots of problems. Like, oh, maybe it's I need to do something about that. And learning to pivot on that is the fear of failure, but just saying, instead of being afraid to fail, just daring to fail. And then learning from that experience, because I think there's a lot of learning in failure. But
and discomfort in general, there's a lot of learning to step in, and your protective parts will come up. And yeah. And I just say one thing, Rex, like, be careful, like, don't defeat your ego. Your ego is there for a reason. You want to love your ego, so then it doesn't have so much power. It's kind of paradoxical thing. Like, you need to learn how to unburden your ego, but love that it's there for you at the same time.
That's going to stick with me, Brannon. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So
this has been great. And I wanted to share one more thing. Liz, I don't know if they said this earlier, but you said it a minute ago and I caught my ear, was about the more feminine a woman can be, the more masculine the man can be. And it's like a shifting balance.
Yeah.
Is that true? Is that something you've experienced?
I have a story about that, if you don't mind, just real quick. So I got married at 50, my husband and I was pretty independent, pretty strong, could handle myself. And the first year we married, we had a family meeting with my siblings and cousins. We all owned property that our parents deemed to us. So thank gosh we've sold that property now and we all still love each other. But I remember the first meeting that Ben was at, I was president of this board for that particular year, and some brother-in-law challenged me on something, and I wasn't too upset, but my husband was sitting to my right, and immediately he stood up and he spoke out, and it was like, that was about the most attractive thing I had ever seen in my husband. That was so sexy to feel like, oh my gosh, I could handle that. Yes, but I don't have to. Right. I'm a wife now. And it just, it made, I don't know, just that masculinity just was so beautiful to me. It's wonderful. And I have to make room for him also, right? I can be strong and handle things, but so I think as a strong woman, I think we also have to make room for our men to be men.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Live and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.